into Down on the Farm Radio's kitchen and the kitchen table. Let's all eat a big old heaping helping of ag breakfast as we celebrate this Monday Labor Day holiday with a special edition of Down on the Farm Radio. The folks at the Texas Farm Bureau Radio Network help us take the day off by providing us an element of Texas Farm Bureau Roundup, the longest-running farm and ranch news program in the nation. Tom Nicoletti introduces today's vignettes. Tom, talk to us about them.
Tropical weather, wildfires, and wild hogs can all play havoc with Texas agriculture. Here's more.
Neighbor, by the time you folks are hearing this, Hurricane Laura has come ashore and certainly has caused devastation. But there were days and days leading up to that devastation where folks were praying for rain in portions of Texas, and then the balance of us on the coast were wishing that they would just wait for the next shower. We'll talk about it on today's program. I'm Larry Marble, reporting from Fulton.
When it comes to wildfires, the Texas Panhandle is one of the most vulnerable regions in the country. I'm James Hunt, and we'll talk about preparing for that threat as I report from Amarillo.
Well, here we are into September. It's usually a planting month in Texas, but things may be different for us. So please join me, John Degno, as we talk about climate gardening.
Areas of Texas have received very little rainfall this late in the summer. As we continue to have warm temperatures, many of us are questioning whether to plant cool season annual forages or not. I'm Dr. Vanessa Olson from Overton.
We begin this week with Larry Marble on the Texas coast as he reflects back on Hurricane Laura, which turned into a Category 4 storm as it made landfall in the Gulf states of Louisiana and, to a lesser extent, Texas. The tropical system produced enormous rainfall that farmers and ranchers do not necessarily need all at one time.
Neighbor, I can't tell you how many times last week that pictures from Hurricane Harvey came up on my Facebook page. We had tremendous damage to our home, and our community of Fulton and Rockport was almost leveled. So you can imagine the fear that I had in my heart as I saw two hurricanes come into the Gulf. Why, just weeks before, Hurricane Hannah had come in, and it did some damage to our home as a Category 1. But I think the thing that got to me most was my friends inland saying, "Good gosh, I hope that thing comes this way." I had to calmly tell them that they might want to just wait for the next shower coming down with a cold front to spare us all the destruction. And then I watched on Wednesday as many cattlemen on the Louisiana coast hired helicopters and huge groups of cowboys and dogs to move cattle off the coast further inland. As I prepared my reports, I spoke to Doug Bass from Cattleman's Brenham as he prepared for their regular Friday sale. I asked Doug this question. Now, how is the storm that will be to your east going to affect y'all this weekend?
I think we might get a little rain out of it. I hope we get a little rain out of it. We could use it. Other than that, I don't think it's going to do much to us around here. I've got a lot of good friends in southern Louisiana that they're scrambling.
Right.
I know they're going to have a hard time. In fact, we got one man that he sent us 62 cows, and I think there's 19 calves on them from down there. He just sold them out. We're going to sell them this Friday. He said he wasn't going to fight the weather.
Right.
So if somebody needs some good ranching cows, we'll have his cattle there to sell.
Of course, that was Doug Bass talking about folks getting their livestock and livelihood out of the way of what became Hurricane Laura and hit the Louisiana coast. Reporting for Texas Farm Bureau Roundup from the coast of Texas that dodged the bullet, I'm Larry Marble.
In the Texas Panhandle, the climate is dry, extremely powerful winds are common, and there is a lot of wide-open grassland. A combination that results in dangerous situations all too often. James Hunt talked with one of the area's top experts on wildfire preparation.
We're going to have fires. That is inevitable. The question is when and how big and how severe. And so every year we need to be thinking about what are we going to do about it.
That's Dr. Tim Steffens, a Texas A&M AgriLife range specialist and associate professor in the Ag Department at West Texas A&M University, and someone who frequently counsels ranchers and others on how to prepare for the threat of wildfires. First things first, Dr. Steffens says, concentrate on safeguarding what's important.
And that's life and property in that order.
Heading the list, Steffens says, make sure you have an evacuation plan.
And that plan needs to have a backup plan, because a lot of times you think, well, we'll go out this road and do thus and so, and that way is blocked by the fire. And so you need to have, all right, so where do we go if we don't do that?
And if you do need to evacuate, know everyone's whereabouts and have an agreed-upon destination.
If everybody is leaving from different places, you need to have somewhere that you're going to meet where you can make sure everybody made it out all right.
Now, when it comes to protecting your homestead,
caliche and gravel are your friend. Keep that area around the houses and the barns and that kind of thing well maintained, no vegetation, where the continuity of fuel is broken.
And as for cattle, if there's a safer place for them to get to, help them, but not at your own risk.
Don't be spending a lot of time moving livestock in a fire. That's a good way to die. Just open the gates into that area, and generally livestock will drift away from a fire and generally be pretty well okay.
Those are some quick tips from Dr. Tim Steffens. You can learn more by searching online for 2 free AgriLife publications. Those publications are titled Safeguarding Against Wildfire and Wildfire Behavior and Emergency Response. Reporting for Farm Bureau Roundup in Amarillo, I'm James Hunt.
Another concern for agricultural producers as well as residents in cities and suburbs is the old challenge of feral hogs and the damage they inflict on crops, pasture land, and property. Here is Barry Mahler in Wichita Falls.
With all that has changed here in Texas in 2020, I think a lot of us are thinking what can happen next. You know, with even all the attention being paid to the new challenges, there are some old ones out there that continue to be a problem. And one thing that's still causing problems across most all of rural Texas continues to be wild hogs. We've talked about them before, but now measures are being taken that could at least help with the problem. Funds were allocated in the latest federal farm bill to try to at least begin to get a handle on the problem, and it's a big problem. Wild hogs are present in all but one county in Texas, and they continue to not only do damage in rural areas, but they're beginning to drift into urban areas as well. Last estimate showed there are 2.6 million in Texas and growing, and they've done an estimated $52 million damage to ag enterprises in just the last couple of years. Several different programs are beginning to take shape. Texas AgriLife has started a program to gain data on how much and where the damage is occurring. We have an agent here in our local area that's interviewing farmers and ranchers and pinpointing the damage over a 4-county area. At the same time, our trapping program is about to begin here along the Red River that will place several traps per county to be moved to the hot areas where the populations are concentrated. These traps will be available to producers to be moved to areas where the hogs are concentrated. The program across the Red River in Oklahoma will mirror the program here in Texas, an effort to help make it more effective along the Red River. Those efforts won't eradicate the invasive pest, but could offer some control until a more effective method is developed. Reporting from the rolling plains of Texas, I'm Barry Muller for Farm Bureau Roundup.
Farm Bureau Roundup will be back after this short break.
In Texas, there's pea-size hail and baseball-size hail. Guess which one hit our house? We didn't even know where to begin, but we called our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent, and he was so reassuring. He knew exactly what to do to get our house back into shape and our lives back to normal. Now, we're even more thankful for the roof over our heads.
Visit Texas Farm Bureau Insurance today at tfbinsurance.com to insure your home for Texas-size weather. Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Now here is horticulturist John Begnaud talking about fall planting as a climate event rather than a calendar event.
Well, we think of gardening as somewhat of an event that's a calendar event, but in reality, it's a climate event because what normally happens is that it could be a little bit wet, a little bit dry, a little bit cooler, a little bit hotter, depending upon where you are in the state of Texas. So if we think of September 1 as the time we plant our fall vegetable gardens, you may rethink that because what may really be necessary is to hold off 2 weeks. You think about cool season vegetables, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, trying to get them up when temperatures are elevated is very difficult. Trying to keep plants wet, like when you're trying to transplant trees and shrubs in September, which is a great month to do that, by the way, you may just postpone it a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks is not going to make or break the survival of these plants. And in reality, just like the people up north know that if it's just perfect climate, kind of cool, a little bit cloudier than normal, you're going to get into a situation where plants will establish faster and grow off quicker, and you're not having to slave away with watering and just bear the heat in the case of hot like we are in the West Texas area. So postpone some of those events, but remember that September and early October are still some of the best times to transplant trees, start new trees, plant shrubs. You can change out to your cool season annuals and perennials, pansies, stocks, things like that. You can begin that when it starts to cool down and stays cool down. So just remember, now is a great time to plant, but watch the weather. This is John Begnaud from San Angelo reporting for Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Dr. Vanessa Olson has advice on planning for winter pastures.
Ideally, we would like to plant forages to soil moisture. Summer pastures should be overseeded in October and early November, depending on location. Delaying planting may give us an opportunity to plant to soil moisture, depending on rainfall chances. Delaying planting too late, such as late November or December, will decrease overall forage production, as well as result in a shorter grazing period. Cool soil temperatures are important for good germination and establishment for small grains and annual ryegrass. Daily minimum temperatures should be below 75 degrees Fahrenheit for good stand establishment. Small grains such as oats, small grain rye, and wheat perform best in specific regions. Most of their forage production is in the fall and early winter. Small grain rye is adapted to a wide variety of soil types and more productive than other small grains. Oats are the least cold tolerant and should be planted in central and southern portions of the state. Wheat is better adapted to colder temperatures and performs well north of I-20. Annual ryegrass, which produces majority of its forage in the spring, can be planted later than other forages. The rainfall needs of ryegrass limits production to portions of the state east of I-35. Also, keep in mind, since we have had dry periods followed by intermittent rainfall, we can see populations of fall armyworms. As you plant winter forages, be prepared to scout for armyworms following any significant rainfall. Delaying control can lead to a complete loss of any winter forage seedlings. This is Dr. Vanessa Olson with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in Overton for the Texas Farm Bureau Roundup.
Finally, Gary Joyner with a report on Texas agricultural land values.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture has released its 2020 Land Values Report. The average value of Texas agricultural land, including buildings, is up 2.4% this year at $2,170 per acre. The average cash rent for Texas cropland is $43, an increase of 1% from a year ago. The increased values in Texas are in contrast to the same figures for the entire U.S. Those average values from across the country are either unchanged or are lower from 2019's record highs. The average value of U.S. cropland, including all land and buildings on farms, was $3,160 per acre for 2020. Cash rental rates for U.S. cropland averaged $139 per acre in 2020. Economists with the American Farm Bureau Federation say the stability in agricultural land values and cash rents occurs amid continued pressure on farm income and commodity prices. Low interest rates continue to make agricultural land an attractive investment. Other factors likely bolstering land values and cash rents are market facilitation program payments designed to help farmers recover from retaliatory tariffs and ad hoc disaster aid to help producers impacted by wildfires, hurricanes, and flooding in recent years. Farmers receiving this aid are more likely to hold on to cash rental agreements. I'm Gary Joyner, and this is your Texas Agriculture Minute.
That is our program for this week. For everyone at Farm Bureau Roundup, I'm Tom Nicoletti, and this is the Texas Farm Bureau Radio Network.
Thank you, Tom. Neighbor, before we go, let's check the grains as they ended on Friday. Courtesy of John Tuggle, Tuggle & Company, Corpus, 800-288-4453. We'll call Corpus area Milo, September delivery, $9.52. Corpus area corn, September delivery, $3.93. Corpus area wheat, September delivery, $5.74 and a quarter. And we'll call number one beans to Houston, September-October delivery, November less 15, $9.53. Neighbor, as close as we can see, we did not sell many bales of cotton on Friday. Average price, or the prices across the state, were $58.56 to $60.81. Looks to me like that's it for the Labor Day edition of my program. I call it Down on the Farm, and they call me Larry Marble, and I call you my neighbor. Neighbor, we'll see you again today at 9:45, 12:45, and 3:45. If we don't, have a nice holiday.